Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted Podcast. Guys, we got a great one from the mailbag today. This is a next level problem. We've got a good leader who is trying to get their team on board with working together. They're trying to put some systems in place, really trying to get an organized, cohesive team. And as they put it, everybody keeps going rogue. As soon as the day starts to get busy, people jump back into their old ways. They're doing things that are not in their job descriptions. All the doctors are doing things differently, or the support staff for those doctors are doing things differently. And they're just pulling their hair out. And they're like, it's the whole team. And it's a good team. And they like each other. And they get along well. And it's a great culture. But the wheels fall off when everything gets busy and everybody just abandons the system and starts freestyling. And what do we do about that? And so Stephanie and I have a really good discussion about that. Boy, there's a lot to unpack here. This is a good episode. This is a next level episode. This is, if 101 level is here's how you manage a single person, this is very much team management. And so I like it. It's challenging, but there's a lot of meat on the bone here. So guys, let's get into this episode.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and the one and only Stephanie Abracadabra Goss. I thought that worked well. I was like, I like the way it just pops to Goss.
Oh, I can't with you.
Abracadabra Goss.
How's it going, Andy Roark?
I'll be honest with you, it's barely holding together. Like it's just.
I know.
It's 100% just like, it's like bubble gum and string. Allison's been out of town for like 2 weeks at this point, and it's
gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. She got a great opportunity. She's in Belize with college students.
Okay.
Like leading a snorkeling diving thing. Meanwhile, it's me and the girls back home. We had a car breakdown yesterday. Had a kid wake up with food poisoning this morning. I got an algebra test came out of nowhere, and I had to step in and teach some algebra. Dad. Yeah, exactly.
How'd that go?
It does. So, all right. So here's how it went. Like this is real algebra. You know what I mean? It's like it's like plot the vertex of this differential. And I'm like, I vaguely remember those words.
ChatGPT to the rescue.
100%. So 100. So but here's the thing. Like I was like, I could play this two ways, right? I could try to like go in my bedroom and learn this and then come out, which is going to be, that's like a comedy. It's a bad comedy waiting to happen,
Yes. Yes.
And Hannah doesn't miss anything. So like, it's like, we're just going to work collaboratively with ChatGPT on this. So I use Gemini. And so, guys, I just took a photo of each question.
Question. Yeah.
And then I was like, I was not lying to anybody. I said, I am helping teach my daughter algebra. Walk me through how to do this problem so we understand. And I've had these really sort of weird epiphanies recently about AI, where there are some incredible things about AI. And there is a way that AI really makes people smarter. And God, I wish I had this when I was doing inorganic chemistry in college.
Sure.
You know what I mean? To be like, it's how I learn is, show me how to do this and explain to me what you're doing. And I understand that you have to do problems and grind them out. I get it.
Right.
But I get so frustrated when I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. And if I can sit with the explanation and figure it out, then I'm like, oh, great. Okay, good. And now I've got this, and now I'll practice, and that will be fine. So anyway, that's how it went. I have this belief, though, that AI is going to unlock a new level of dumb in people.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like
100%. Yes.
You are not going to need to use your brain. Almost ever. It's the equivalent. I've had this feeling for a long time. You know those little like Go scooters at Walmart that you you sit on and you ride around?
Yeah.
I'm terrified of those things because I'm like, if I start riding around everywhere on a little Go scooter, I will lose the ability to walk myself around. Like I will, you know what I mean? Like I will get really comfortable. I worry about getting injured in one of those scooters and not being able to get back off of it because I'm like, I like this. And so That's ChatGPT for your brain. It's just I saw a study just in the last week that said, did you know that if you use Google Maps to get around, you actually start losing the ability to spatially orient yourself and to
Really?
Yes. And so
Okay.
people who are heavy users of like Waze or Google Maps, they actually, the part of their brain that does directions and sort of navigation, it just kind of atrophies after a while. You're not used to thinking about where you're going. You don't think about the roads anymore. You don't think about like in space, where am I trying to get to? And like, if you do it for years and everywhere you go,
I mean, that
Google
makes
Maps.
sense.
It does. And like once I noticed it, I was like, because I use that a lot. And I've gotten to this place where once I saw it, I was like, I know the area around my house. And then it's kind of nebulous. And then I kind of know the area usually around where I'm going. But I have to stop and be like, all right, how am I going to get there? And I just quit doing that for a long time. I was like, hop in and go. And so anyway, so that's true. There's also articles that came out in the last couple of weeks about illiterate college students. Did you see this?
No.
All right. So there's been a big hubbub. There was an article called like what the average college student knows, something like that.
Okay.
And I saw it when it came out. It was fascinating. So there's this guy, and he's a college professor. He doesn't say where, but he's at what he calls an average mid-tier college. So he's like the SAT is about 1,000. You know, the students are like B students in high school coming.
Sure.
And the first line when he starts to break it down is the average college student today is illiterate. And what he means is not they can't read the words. They can read the words, but they do not have the ability to actually
Comprehend the meaning.
Comprehend the meaning. They cannot read a story and then tell you what happened and why it happened and what the underlying factors were. Like they cannot do that. And he says that's true for a short story, not even talking about a novel. And then the same thing is with math is like they can't do basic math. Not that they like didn't learn. They just have
Can't do it.
keyed everything into their phone for so long. They just don't have that any sort of muscle memory repetition. They have to figure everything out from the start, and they just don't. And so anyway, all that to say, I think there's going to be a new level of dumb where it's going to be so easy to use AI to remember things, to do things, to find things, that we're just going to get lazy brain to the point that it just
I could see it.
Everything will have to go through your phone. So anyway, I'm worried. I am worried about that. I do think the opposite is true too, where you can do like what we did with Hannah's algebra and say, teach me how to do this.
Yes.
And I am smarter because I used AI in that way.
Yes.
I think you're going to have the discipline to be the person who's like, teach me how to do this. And instead of saying, write this email for me, you're going to have to write the email and then say, critique this email and tell me how it could be better. And that will make you a better writer, And so anyway,
that makes sense. That actually makes sense.
It's been interesting. I've been really kicking it around a lot in the last couple of days. I just feel like AI is moving so fast in what it can do, and just like the take a picture of the problem thing. Like that was a new use for me. I haven't done that in the past, but oh my god,
I will admit I hit that at the beginning of the school year. We were
we
had a night where and I was looking at the kids' math, and I'm like, my kids are both stupid smart.
Yeah.
And they're further now in secondary school math than I ever got in maths in university. And so I'm like, I got nothing. It was 25 years ago. I have no idea what you're doing. And so I was like, ChatGPT, like, Chad, explain this to me.
Yeah.
Break it down so that I can understand, because then I have to help teach them how to do it. And I love that. And it is super useful. And I'm with you. As someone who has ADHD, I will say AI is hugely helpful for me in a lot of ways, for like staying on track and keeping track of things and not losing things. And I can totally see it being a slippery slope of lazy brain, because it's really easy to do a lot of things. And I have like my happy medium use with it, because I love technology and I do like making my life easier, has been to lean in, like to your point of, let me do the thing and then help me make it better, because it does feel like that. It feels like the slippery slope. Like I remember watching the movie WALL-E and like seeing everybody in their little like flying scooters, and everybody can't walk.
Yes.
Like that's a scary reality.
That's
you
what
know?
that's what I'm thinking about. I mean, I really do. Like, that's exactly, like, I've explained this to someone else when they said the exact same thing about Wall-E. It's so true. I saw this, I'll get off the education thing in a second, but I've been deep in this rabbit hole. I saw this study that was done about should college professors give the students their PowerPoint slides.
Sure.
And it came from this idea of, people, when I lecture, people ask me for my PowerPoint slides. They're like, we really, and some people can be really adamant about it. I'm like, there's nothing on them but some pictures. Like I keep them intentionally sparse. But people really, really want them. So there's a study done. And do you know what happens when you give college students your PowerPoint slides as a presenter? It's crazy.
No, they don't look at them.
Well, your high performing students are unaffected. The people who were going to get an A on the test anyway, still get an A.
Yeah.
The students that struggle do worse if you give them your slides. Oh. And the reason is because it gives them a false sense of security.
Sure.
That
so they work even less hard.
Exactly right. They're like, I have the answers. I have the information. They're less likely to take their own notes if they know they're getting the slides and all of those things. Yeah. And they actually do worse if you give them the slides. Yeah. And so anyway, that was kind of an eye-opening for me. But I think that that's a really interesting metaphor for like AI is, we're giving a lot of people the slides and they're like, I've got an AI chatbot listening to this meeting. And so I don't need to write anything down. I don't need to take my own notes. And so anyway, I think that sort of stuff is going to be really interesting in kind of how we parse it out and when we decide to use it. I think that overuse of AI over the long term, I think there's a real chance it's going to turn us into the people from Wall-E.
It's a scary thought. It's a real scary thought.
So anyway, but as long as our job is managing human beings, I think we're going to be okay.
I was going to say, I feel like despite AI, humans will always find a loophole. I really think that dealing with human beings is going to continue to be a distinctly human activity. I think that there's going to be someone who needs to manage other people. I think people want to be seen as humans, and that doesn't really happen with AI. I think that especially getting people to work together, things like that, I think that that's going to be a distinctly very human thing for a long, long time. Yeah, so, totally. Yeah, totally. Well, this one is intriguing to me, and I'm actually excited to talk this through with you because there are pieces of this that I am struggling with in the practice in the clinic right now. So I'm super, it's one of those episodes. Everybody always says to us, gosh, you guys always talk about things in such a timely way. And I hear it and I needed to hear it. And sometimes I didn't even know I needed to hear it. Yeah. And I was looking at this mailbag and I'm like, oh, good. I need to.
I love it.
Looking forward to talking this through with Andy.
Great. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. I'll say it front.
It is. So we got a mailbag. We have a team that is a practice leader who's super excited because they feel like they finally have a full staff.
Yep.
And they feel like they have the right culture mix. So super smart, capable team members, techs, assistants, CSRs, all of them. And they're struggling still with communication. And in specific with communication skills and maybe work skills that are required for them all to collaborate and work successfully as a team. So everybody appears to get along really well. They like working together. Yep. I loved it because they mentioned that the team has done a DISC assessment. And so a lot of the team is high S's. So really supportive, relationship driven, wants everybody to work together and get along. And this leader is like, I'm seeing a lot more independence and dominance come out in the day-to-day of the team because everybody kind of, when it comes down to it, everybody seems like they're going a little rogue and trying to do things their own way on their own instead of leaning in and working together. And they were like, I've listened to you guys. I've taken the workshops. I feel like these are the boxes that I've checked, right? We practice, we run group scenarios, we talk about things in one-on-ones to talk about skills and expectations. We've got clearly defined roles. For example, our room tech, that has a job description. Everybody knows what the role and responsibilities are. We've got, defined appointment times, and we're seeing pretty lengthy appointments. So it's not like we're asking them to work excessively hard. We're not asking them to cram 60 minutes of stuff into a 15-minute appointment. They've got the time. And also, I'm sitting here looking at it from a leadership perspective and a business perspective going, yes, and I need them to see a certain number of appointments every day to pay the bills and turn the lights on and pay everybody's payroll for the day. And so I need everybody to stop trying to do it their own way, which is frustrating the doctors, and start working together as a team. And so they were like, how do I how do I get them to stop going rogue without trying to policy this to death? Because I feel like I could write scenarios and write policies for all of the things, but I don't want to go down that road. How do I get them to stop falling apart when things go off course and lean into working together instead of going their own way, which is what they're doing now? And how do I get them to understand that we do have protocols and policies, not to tell them how to do their jobs and become robots, but so that they know it's easier for them to work together, right? And I was like, oh, this is such a great question.
Yes, this is a super great question. It's also really hard, which is why I love it. There are two levels of questions in my mind, right? The first level of questions that we get are usually around skills or approaches. They're like, this is what's going on. How do I approach this? What is the skill that I need?
Right.
And then we say, okay, well, you're doing this. The other level of question is what this is, which is really not about the basic skills. There's nothing I'm going to say here where I'm like, this is a thing that you say, and then everybody's going to be okay. Right. This is very much a high-level cooking class. You know, where it's like, you know how to cook the eggs, you know how to do all stuff, but this is high level. So anyway, I really like it. Let me call out the feeling here, because anyone who's run a team or had a team or run a business or whatever, they have probably at some point run into what feels like an intractable problem, and everyone is involved. It's not one person. It's not Shannon's not doing her job. It is like they all come apart, and there's multiple people involved, and I can't really tell where the problem is or who is the problem. And I like these people and they should be doing a good job, but they're just not. And it's just all falling apart. And it's a level of frustration that's really hard to explain. Also, these things happen and they just tank the day. And it's sort of scary because you don't know who to pull into your office and talk to. And it feels like you're in this quagmire where you can't, it's like a disease process that you can't get a diagnosis on. You're just like, what is this? And the more you kind of push and pull on it, the worse it gets, because then you're giving feedback to people and they're saying, I'm not the one who's doing this and this is not my fault. And it really spins up. And so there's two approaches that I see people take. The first is what's mentioned here, which is trying to legislate your way to order, which is if I make enough rules, ultimately there will be no way these people can mess up. And I will tell you, that's not true. It's 100% not true.
It's 100% not true. And that's how you end up with the 900-page employee handbook.
Yes. And you still have a broken system. Like, that's the worst. Now you have 900 pages of rules and your stuff doesn't work.
Yes.
And and now you're just more. And then when you start trying to fix things, people will tell you that's against the rules. And then they're using your own rules against you, which is when you go to path number 2, which is the flaming, raging sword of justice. That's when you're like, gosh darn you, all of you. Yes. That's it. Taking heads. Yes. All of you people. And I want a complete reboot. Everybody's getting new jobs.
Yes.
You're all out of here except the kennel kid, who's the only person not remotely involved in what's been going on.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's path number 2 is the flaming raging sword of justice. And it, obviously it makes things worse. Then people start getting defensive because you're upset and they're like, I'm trying my best, it's not my fault. And they're getting frustrated at each other because they're like, I'm doing this and then this other person responding this way. And so anyway, that's pretty much kind of what I see. You see people start talking about, and here's the thing, when it happens to you and you're the leader, you're saying, this is what we need to do, and I'm making these rules, and then people are going rogue. And at some point, you start to have real feelings about being disrespected. You start to have feelings about not being taken seriously. You know what I mean? And you start having these thoughts about insubordination and things that are not how you usually think. But that's where frustration pushes you to, and and I have felt those things, and I know other people who run teams have felt those things.
Because it feels like you're trying to do their job to help them, and all they're doing is making your life more difficult. And so then you get pushed into that corner where the lizard brain comes out and you just lash out at people. Like, why can't you just show up and do your jobs?
Yeah. Yes. And so the answer to today's question, I really like, this is going to be a test of endurance for the leader. This is Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. Ultimately, you can get to the top of the hill. But just the best advice from a headspace standpoint is put the sword away, stop trying to make rules. You're right. Rules should be guides to help people along, But ultimately, what we really want is a culture of understanding so that people have the guidance they need, but ultimately they can work independently and autonomously because every day is going to be different and the cases are going to be different. And so I want people to understand what they're doing so that they can make adjustments to provide the best care to the patient, the client at the time. And so anyway, you've got to get out of that headspace and then settle into a long, hard day of work headspace. And we'll sort of walk through what that is. In order to do this, what you're really going to have to do is you're going to have to let go of the reins a little bit. You're going to have to take your foot off the accelerator. And this is a hard thing for people because no one goes into work as a team lead and is like, you know what I'm going to spend my day doing? Sorting things out. It's like, no, I'm going to get these things done. And the obstacle to me getting these things done is my people not talking to each other, not working. And if they would just do their jobs, then I could get the thing done. And I'm like, you need to put that away because that's not what we're doing today. Yeah. What we're going to do today is start to wade into this and really sort it out. You know, I'm trying to think of a good metaphor for the thing you thought was going to be a line from A to B. And then, I mean, basically, I'll give you this. So yesterday, my daughter was going to get out of school and she was going to go pick her sister up at the middle school, and then she was going to bring them back, and then we were going to have dinner and do a thing. But suddenly, and that was my afternoon. My afternoon was rolling towards dinner and whatever. Right. But my daughter's car did not start. And so I have to wrap up what I'm doing and then go, and I'm trying to work with my daughter and we try to get her car started, and I couldn't get it to jump off. And so then my younger daughter's school is like, everyone has to leave. And so then I didn't get to finish fixing the car. I had to go to the other school and then come back. And it was just like, my whole night was dealing with this car. And it was not a bad thing. It wasn't a bad night. I had a good time with my kids. Like, we did a thing together, taught my girls how to jumpstart a car and work on it. And like, it's just, again, and also I taught them how to show a little bit of leg. So the AAA guy who was at the high school parking lot for somebody else's car would come over and ask if we needed anything, which is how we ultimately got the car restarted. It's true. I wish it wasn't true. I caught myself talking as if I took my shirt off, I had grease up to my elbows. Like, no, the AAA guy was there because some kid had a flat tire. And he was like, hey, sir, do you need some extra help? And I was like, yes, I do. I can't get this car started. Yes, please. So anyway, that was the life lesson that I gave to my children.
Oh, gosh.
And
but anyway, the reality is, like, you had a plan. And your day looked radically different. And so even though it was successful, you feel the turmoil and the stress of, I didn't accomplish anything because it didn't go according to plan. Nothing
else got done except this plan got sorted out. And thanks for bringing this back to where we started. But that's where I was going. I got really into it. But I promise we were coming back here. So we were coming back here. But that's it. You know what I mean? And it was like at some point during the day, I had to make the hard choice to say, Andy, you need to stop being disappointed or upset about all the things that you were supposed to do that you did not get to do. And you just need to lean into this and make it as not awful as you can. That's what you need to do. And so the same thing is here from a headspace standpoint. We are going to have to take our foot off the gas. We are going to have to take some deep breaths. And then we are going to have to start a real positive investigation of what is going on. And that's it. Like, that's where this is going to, you're going to have to get curious. And it's funny, people are like, well, I know what's happening. So, well, if you know what's happened, then just fix it. Well, I can't. Well, I mean, I don't really know. Or they're like, I do fix it. I go in and I tell them, stop doing this. Is that working? Absolutely not. It's absolutely not working at all. Like, okay, well, I have suggestions, but if you got it fixed, I will step away. But anyway, so from a headspace standpoint, that's what it's going to be. Is just you've got to get into that. The more positive a headspace you can get into, the more effective we can make you in the next steps when we actually go and work on it. But I just got to tell you, that is so hard, and sometimes it involves just sitting for a while because you feel defeated. And like, if you're that way, I see you. I have totally sat and thought, why isn't this working? Like, I have good people that I know they're trying hard. Like, I have tried to make rules for this. I mean, sure, I feel like I must be failing here. It's okay. Sit with that a little bit as you need to, but we'll get to work sorting it out.
So Camp Tough Love Headspace, I'm going to tell you why it's not working. Yeah. Because the reality in leadership is just because people like each other does not mean that they know how to work effectively together. And this is one of those assumptions that we make as leaders, is that if I get everybody to like each other, then the rest is all going to come smoothly because they can work together. And that is a jump that we make that we cannot make, right? We have to, just because they like each other, it might make the job easier, but it doesn't mean that the job itself is going to go away. And so from a headspace perspective, I think the number one thing that you have to wrap your brain around as a leader is you still have a job to do here. And the job is not to policy your way out of this or discipline your way out of this or, tell people what to do and how to do it, because to your point, that won't actually solve the problem.
Yeah.
I think where we start with problem solving this is stepping into open-brained teaching mode, because we have to learn how to actually work together.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some truth to I think there's truth to that for sure, that people can like each other and still really fail to work together in different circumstances. I think that's 100% true. The other thing I think just from a headspace standpoint is, I think a lot of times things can be simplified down to there's two challengers. You're dealing with the red team versus the blue team. You're dealing with, the monsters versus the superheroes. That's it.
Okay.
But some problems are not monsters versus superheroes. Some problems are not, Batman versus the Joker. Mm-hmm. They are Game of Thrones, where there are 16 different parties involved, and they all have different motives, and they want different things. And some of them are bad, but some of them are less bad. But really, everybody's complicated. And I see that a lot. And so if you're running into these problems, and this person, I like their letter. I got the impression that they're smart. They have run a good ship here. I think this profiling, as we teach it at Uncharted, it's in our Leadership Essentials certificate. You teach it in that certificate. We use it a lot. They're clearly doing a lot of things right. At some point, you wade into a situation like this, and I suspect if you can't tell that there's one person that's the problem and the whole team is doing something, we're going to have to wade in there. I agree with you and figure out what is going on? Where is this breaking down? You're going to have to do some diagnosis. So anyway, that's what I got for Headspace. You want to take a break and then talk about how we actually do it?
Yeah, I loved how you summed that up, because I think the reality is when it is everyone, it's not a people problem, it's a systems problem. And that is a solutions driven space. So let's take a break and then talk about how do we actually attack this problem.
The big thing that I want to talk about when we sort of come in here is, I think you were right too, when it's a whole team problem, it's usually a systems problem. But that doesn't necessarily mean we have to make more rules. And so I want to pick up here and sort of talk about the rules thing. Okay. So you and I have talked about this a lot. One of the things that I learned in my career when I started, I've always been sort of an AD guy. I'm sort of a creative energy. I'm a strong I in the disc, meaning I like to get people fired up and to work together, collaborate. I'm not innately an organized person. And so that's been something I've always had to work on in my life. And I've gotten much, much, much better at it. But I always thought that the answer was getting more organized. And what I found over time is organization is great up to a point, at which point it starts to become stifling. You just got a lot of rules. People feel like robots and things like that.
Yes.
And so it's really about this balance of trying to give people guidelines and then also treating them as human beings and getting them to understand what we're doing so that they can make choices on the ground in the moment. And so even if you say, I want everybody to work just like this, in this way, following this system, they're still going to be making decisions about triaging things. They're going to make decisions about how I use my time to support the team, whether do I go get A or do I go get B? How do I engage in this specific instance? And so there's always going to be that. I think what we really need to do is step one is just set aside some time to invest in this. It's always hard too when things break down. So this person says, we get into the day and then all of a sudden we sort of get overwhelmed and everybody goes rogue. And so my thought is okay, as a diagnostician, I like to think of as an investigator, how can you be there when that happens? You know what I mean? Because you kind of need to start to see what's going on here. And if you can't be there when it happens to watch and sort of understand what's happening, you're going to have to do some serious interviews. And what that really means is talking to each person and saying, great, tell me about yesterday. What was going on? All right, I noticed early on we were working this way, and by the end of the day we were working this way. What happened? When did we sort of go off the rails? What did you see? This, and be very clear, this is not to get anybody in trouble. And I think you have to stress that. This is not about figuring out who was wrong. I would very much state it as, I want to help the team. I want to figure this out, and I need to understand what's happening. And so, yeah, I think getting serious about that investigative approach and really starting to ask questions, and honestly probably interview different people, but you're going to have to get deep in the weeds. And I would honestly start really curious, and that's where we're going to go. And then you're going to need to make sure that everybody understands why you're trying to get this system to work. And and a lot of times what happens is this is a failure in team buy-in. We have implemented this system, but the team doesn't believe in the system, or they don't understand the system, or they see an obvious problem in the system. And I will find you probably more than half the time when I've ended up in this situation, I, as the maker of the system, have been wrong. Probably the majority of the time. There has been something that I didn't understand that happened on the ground that I was not taking into account. It was way bigger deal than I thought it was, or it was a way bigger deal to them than I thought it was. And that's the same thing of it being a genuinely big deal versus it's not a big deal, but they believe it's a big deal, so they act like it's a big deal. So it is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, right? So from a psychological perspective, let's just think about human beings. Like when chaos hits, when things go sideways, humans default to whatever feels most safe and most familiar, right?
Yes.
Like it's just instinctual. We're trying to protect ourselves. And when we step back as a leader and look at the team as a whole, if everybody is doing that, that's not defiance of the rules of each other, of your hierarchy. That's just survival. Their lizard brains are going into survival mode. And so when we step back and look at it from that perspective and approach it from that perspective, with the team, which is like, this is not about bad behavior. It's about getting clarity so that we can have an easier time and that we can be confident under pressure, so that when the day goes sideways or we do get crazy, that we all feel like we know what to do, right? Like you were talking earlier. It's so funny because you were talking earlier about not knowing how to read maps when we use AI. Like, I think for a lot of us as leaders, we think about like the team knowing what the rules are, and we think about the rules being their map. And I think that's true to a point. Like, protocols can give the team a roadmap, right? Yes. Like they know where they can see the lay of the land. And if we don't give them a compass to use with that map, if we don't think about the principles, the way we want them to show up, the values of the team as a whole, if we don't give them that guiding set, they're not going to know what to do with the map. Like, it's going to do them no good. So we have to teach them how to pair those two things together. And so from a solutions perspective, that's where, if we step back and approach it from that kind place of, this is about figuring out how do we have an easier time at work together. Let's think about where the gaps are.
Yes.
And then let's figure out how to solve those gaps as a group. They are going to get on board and be a part of that conversation, instead of it being every person unto themselves, which is how they're acting now.
I think you're so right. And you can tell the way that you and I have both shifted the language, where you said, let's figure out where the gaps are. I think it's really important to shift from the idea of, you guys aren't doing this right, or people aren't doing what they're supposed to do. We need to put that language aside and be candid and say, this isn't working. You know, like for our team, it's like, there's a plan, but clearly it's not working. And you say, but Andy, it's not working because they're not doing their job. I go, maybe they're just not doing their job. But you said, Ryder, that this was a good team and they communicated well and you felt good about them. It's not working in that case. Like, they're not being lazy. It's not working, and we don't know why it's not working. But if I put blame on them, they're going to get defensive, and I'm not going to find out what's going on. And so, what are the gaps? You know, our navigation system, to go back to the map and compass, our navigation system here is not working. Like help me understand here, guys. Like, we've got this is the plan, it's what we're doing, and then everybody kind of starts to go their own ways. What is happening? And we're in phase one of this. And so that type of research is I think that's key. I think it's step number one. The headspace for this is critical. If you pull your flaming raging sword of justice and then start interrogating people, it's not going to go well. You're not going to get what you need. People are going to get defensive. They'll blame other people because they're afraid. You're just not going to get where you want to be. So you have got to get yourself into the patient, strong-willed place where you're like, I am going to slowly untangle this knot if it takes me the rest of the week. And this is another thing you have to see as an investment of, do you really want this problem fixed? And the way it was laid out of, this is how we want to run our practice. If it takes you a month to get this figured out, that's a good investment in the long, and seriously, in the grand scheme of things, it is.
Yes.
And so I think that framing is important. So get curious. And then once we understand where the issues are, and that's really the tricky part. It's going to be, you can make it can be interesting to really try to figure this out. Look at it as a diagnostician, not as someone that's on a boat that's sinking and you're like, we have got to fix this or we're all going to drown. Like, no, just be an investigator, take your time, work the case methodically. And then we're going to get back in, at that point, we're going to get back into our team buy-in mode. And so if we haven't found something that we really need to fix, maybe it's a perception problem, maybe it's just that people don't understand why this is so important, then we're going to start to lean into our team buy-in approach. And so anyway, if you're an Uncharted member, you have access to the Leadership Essentials Certificate, and team buy-in is one of our workshops. And so we talk in great detail there, but the basic takeaways that I would sort of say is we need to communicate the why behind this system. We need to understand what their concerns are about the system. We need to start to kind of compromise and collaborate as best we can, but we need to get them on board. And remember, the impact of your idea is the quality of the idea times the buy-in. And so if they have feedback on the plan that maybe isn't as good as what you want to do, but they think it's feasible and they want to do it, my advice to you would be, I would alter the plan to take into account what their desires are and what they're trying to do, because they'll be more bought into it. But it's going to take some time. You're going to have to sort it out. We're going to go back around and we're probably going to have to talk about the why again. And if the wheels are just coming off easily, and that's where it sort of feels like in this letter, then I don't think you have a compelling why for the team. It's not that it's not a great why. It's not motivating them, or else they wouldn't bail on the plan so easily.
Yeah. I think action steps wise, like this leader to me really wants the team to be able to have the flexibility and the empowerment to change the plan, to make decisions in real time, to work together. Like they want them to do that. So where do we start? They gave us a good list. One of those things was we have clearly defined roles. Okay. But if they're abandoning the roles, they need a reminder system. So how are you going to do that? Right. So action steps wise, like when you're having your morning huddle, do you run through and say, here's the roles for today. Here's what everybody's doing. Here's who's the floater. Here's who's the room tech. Here's who's the thing. Like, what are you doing to reinforce those things so that everybody knows and everybody's on the same page? And it's not just like, I looked at my work schedule and I know I'm the room tech today, but does Sarah also know that I'm the room tech today? And what does that mean? Right. So like, don't assume that. Eliminate that assumption and make sure that it happens by incorporating that into your flow and your process today. And the most important part of that is, why does that role matter? You don't want to just read out everybody's role. Why is that important? Because Jenny is the one that you're going to go to if clients have questions about patients that are here in the hospital. Because if we need to see fit-ins, if we need to add drop-offs to the schedule, we're fully booked, you're going to talk to Jessica because she's our point person today for triage, right? Yeah. It's so that they understand the why behind that, so that then when it does get crazy, it does get busy, it does get stressed, they feel that safety to flex and make decisions as a group, instead of being like, well, I don't know what everybody else is doing, so I'm just going to try and control what I can control in my own sphere, right? Like they're acting that way. They're going rogue as a defense mechanism because they know that they can only control themselves. And so I think that helps them know what the roles are. And the other piece of that is, you can't assume that they know what good teamwork is. You have got to regularly and constantly reinforce for them, what does good teamwork look like? Yeah. And so if that is your goal, if that's the end, if we begin with the end in mind, if we want them to practice good teamwork, they have to be able to clearly articulate a picture of what that looks like.
Yep.
and then be able to work backwards from there. And that only comes from having those conversations, defining what it looks like. You know, one of the simplest tools that you taught me is the ability to ask the team and say, hey, like, let's think about a time in the, last few weeks where we were super busy, but we all left smiling at the end of the day. Yeah. What made that day different than all of the other days this week, right? You're getting them to focus on the positive, and you're eliminating that negativity bias, and you're getting them to lean into, we've already done this. So then how do we just repeat this process on a regular basis?
Oh, yeah. I think you're absolutely spot on. The other thing I would layer on top of that is when you see good teamwork, when you see people running the plan, you need to be there with your carrot. You know what I mean?
Praise
you want to call that out. You celebrate that, pat that person on the back at the team huddle. Just say, hey, I just want to thank Stephanie because this is what was going on and things were getting busy. And I saw her leaning in and she was doing this thing and she was a great team player. And give people real examples of the behaviors they do that you love and you're excited about, and reinforce that behavior that way. I think that's really, it's just really key in sort of getting the team on board with kind of where you're going. And so I think all of those things are sort of the main things for me. I really love the conversation with them about how we want things to go. The truth is, when we're talking about this, when we're talking about running a good system and people keep going rogue, nobody wants to be at a hospital where other people are doing your job, or you're doing a job you're not supposed to be doing, or you don't know what's expected of you because nobody's really following the clearly defined, swim lanes that they're supposed to be in. Like, nobody wants that. And so that's why I really feel like the investigation part here, and then the conversations with the team about why we're trying to do that. I really think you have everything you need to be successful there, because this is not a hard sell. You're not trying to talk them into seeing more appointments in a day than they're currently seeing. Like, they're seeing the same number. You're trying to get them to work together to make this easier on themselves. Right. And you're not trying to get them to stay late. You're trying to get them to leave earlier. And so you've got all these tailwinds, of like, you're going in a direction that they should want to go. And that's why I think if you can get your head straight on how you feel about it, this should be doable. Like, everything you're trying to do should be good for them in their eyes. And if it's not, I just want to understand why. And so I think that's a big thing. The last thing that I'll mention here, and there's a reason this is last, and I want this to be the last thing in everybody's mind. It's like the thing I'm tying on to the outside. It is not the big driver. I don't want people to grab this and go forward. There are some people who don't like change. They have been freestyling and they want to continue to freestyle, and they don't really want to change. And I don't want to assume that that's what's going on. And especially if it's the whole team. Again, if it's one person, it's much easier. But sometimes, and I have seen teams, this often happens when people buy a new hospital, or there's a new owner that comes in, like one of the veterinarians buys the hospital, becomes the owner, and the team is like, this is how we've always done it. It's how we're going to keep doing it. And the whole reason the associate bought the practice was in order, they saw potential to make it better, and then you come to that. And so the last thing I'll kind of put on is, you want to, after you've done all these other things, start to talk to people a little bit about how this change is really important, and it's going to happen. This is where we're going, and let them know that this is serious. Like, it's almost, I even like to talk about it like I'm powerless. Like, it's where we're going to go, and that transition is always hard, and change is always hard. Unfortunately, this is just what we're gonna do. We've got a couple months to get there, but honestly, it's going to get more and more important. And you see, I'm setting the stage. I'm giving them some time to get on board, but I am foreshadowing that this is going to get more serious. And that's just kind of push people. There are some things where, we talk about it, and maybe I'm kind of serious, and maybe I'm not, and maybe I'd like us to try to do a little better at X or Y. Maybe we really should do a little bit better job talking about dentistry. And then there's things where I'm like, we're going to do this, and people who are not willing to do this are not going to be here in a year.
Well, that's the accountability piece, right?
Yes.
And
totally.
They gave us a great example in the mailbag, which we didn't talk about, but they said, one of the pieces to try and make things run more smoothly is that they're using an AI scribe tool. And so they're like, we have this, we invested in this thing, but it's not being used consistently. And so I'm so glad that you put this at the end, because I also had it at the end.
Well, you got to put it there. Like, we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm not excited about it. And I think where you really screw yourself is when you go to the accountability piece. Well, right, before you've really done your due diligence to figure out what the issue is. And if the system's not working and then all of a sudden you're just tightening the screws down on everybody, like that's really not where you want to be.
Yes. And when you've done all the other work, when you have talked to them about teamwork, when we have when we have talked about what the end looks like, when we have done the work to support them, when we have praised them, when we've done all of the other steps, then it is still about expectations and accountability. And part of this is, if you've defined for them what their job is and they're showing up and they're still not doing the job, that's a different conversation. That's the accountability conversation. And that's where I think people struggle with that, because they're like, well, but they're not doing their job. And so how do I tell them that they're not doing their job? Here's the thing. If a tool is part of the job, and it was such a great example, right? So if we have an AI scribe and you've said to them, our expectation is that you're all using this to make your lives easier, and we've done the training, we've given them all of the pieces, we've done our part, then using it is not optional, right? It's like wearing pants to work. You don't have a choice. You don't come into the practice without pants on your body. It's the same as the teamwork expectation. So everybody can't bail for lunch and leave one person on the floor. That's not teamwork. You can set those expectations with the team, whether it's around a tool like the scribe, whether it is around how they're working together, whether it is around how they're communicating. You can set those expectations. And then the accountability can look as simple as, it's not optional, you need to do it.
Yeah.
That end of sentence. Like, no is a complete sentence. And we all, as humans, I think, struggle with that sometimes. It's the same here from an accountability perspective. It can be as simple as saying, this is the job. This is the expectation.
Yeah.
You need to do it. The next conversation is, we had this conversation. Your behavior is not changing it. Now we're having a conversation about your behavior not changing. Yeah. And that's a completely different conversation.
No, I completely agree. I think my approach on this would be, if there's a number of things we're trying to do, and like the AI scribe, let's just say it's one of the things in the system. I'd try not to do them all at once. Yeah. I would try to show people the roadmap and say, all right, guys, so it is July the 1st. By August 15th, everybody needs to be using the AI scribe.
Right.
And that's where it is. And then by September 15th, everybody needs to we're going to be doing this other thing. And so go ahead. I want people to transfer. Go ahead and start transitioning. If you're running into problems, say so now. I'd like to find this out early before transition day. It's kind of like a PIM system, right? You don't surprise them and turn on the new PIM system. Like, everybody knows it's coming. Yes. Like, you set the trend. And the team is going to try to drag their feet. They just will. Don't be kind, be supportive, be positive. Don't be threatening, be positive. And also, let them know this is coming, and then go ahead and start having people switch over. And at some point when you get to that date, say, all right, guys, this is the date. And if people aren't using the scribe, and honestly, I would audit people. I'd be like, this is the day. We're going to be checking, making sure everybody's switched over. If you're not switched over, I'm going to assume that you're having a problem with the system, and I'm going to come and talk to you, and we'll figure out how to get you up and going. And people are like, Andy, that's kind of annoying. It's meant to be annoying. I'm going to be annoying. I think it's so funny. I don't want to get into this right here, but one of the truths about being a leader is you cannot be a leader and also be absolutely obsessed with everyone liking you all the time. You can be likable, but you are going to do things that annoy them. And if you kind of lean into it, this is the power of the dad joke and being a dad. And seriously, it's when I learned this was being a dad of teenage kids, where I'm like, I'm going to be dorky AF. Yeah. But you're going to clean your room. And I'm not going to yell at you, but I'm going to come around and I'm going to dance in your room until you clean it. And I'm just going to do these things that are like, they're kind of funny, but they're also kind of annoying. And it's like, that's because I'm your dad. And I kind of this happened. So the same thing is sort of with the team of like, I'm going to come and say something and I'm going to be nice to you. And I like you. I'm not going to come and be mean to you, but also I'm going to kind of need you to do this thing. Come on, let's get on board. And it's much better to lead with positive reinforcement, to celebrate people, to shout out the people who jump on board. Try to set that as an example. Signpost what's coming down the road, like how we're going to be switching over, and then switching over. And if it doesn't happen, then we're going to go into investigation phase and go, okay, what happened? So you're not using the scribe, so everybody else is using the scribe. What's going on? Where are we at, guys? What's happening here?
Yeah.
And let them talk to you. And they might have a good reason, and they might also not have a good reason. And, at some point we start to get pretty clear about, I understand that you like to add your notes. You can add your notes to what the scribe creates. But we're going to get on board where everybody's using the same thing, and we're going to get standards that and explain the why again. But just start to be a presence. I really believe that most people will take the path of least resistance. Like, that's what they do with their day. And if the path of least resistance is, I'm going to do what I've always done, then they'll do that. And if doing what you've always done involves having to deal with Andy, who's not being a jerk, but he's dancing. He's dancing in my bedroom until I get done. It's like, seriously, it is the path of. That's the thing is, my kids would rather just clean their room than have to deal with me coming around, singing doing my impression of the Lady Gaga Abracadabra song. That's what they would rather have happen. And so anyway, but it's that. But also by that point too, you should not be battling the team. You should, if there's individuals who have a problem, you should have gotten. And now we're playing a one-on-one game, and we know how to do that. That's Batman versus the Joker, which is where we are comfortable being Batman. But you can't be Batman versus all of Gotham City. We got to get this going in the right direction, and ultimately it might break down, and there's a Joker, and we'll deal with that person once we've kind of teased him out from the team. But we're going to celebrate the rest of the team. Yeah,
and the reality is, you guys, this is hard. Like things fall apart. The reality of practice is the train will jump the tracks.
Yeah, always.
For some of us, it happens every day. For some of us, it's every week. Like, there will always come a point in time where the train jumps the tracks for every team, even high performing, organized, especially get along teams. Like, it will fall apart for them.
Well, it's and the train jumps the track because you're making changes.
Right.
If you don't want the train to jump the track, just stay stagnant. Just keep doing what you've always done.
Right.
And, the only reason you have this problem is because you're trying to get better. Isn't like that's the crazy curse of life is if you would just curl up and die, everything will be easy. But when you're trying to improve and get better, that's when you're Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill. And so I think that's just a really important call out of this is the penalty of trying to do better and trying to be better. You're not doing anything wrong. It only happens because you're trying to be better.
Well, and I think our job as leaders is to prep them for that the train is going to come off the tracks, and then teach them how to get back on when things go sideways. That's our action step in the middle as leaders, is to do that work. And so I think that them knowing and feeling safe to say things are going to go sideways, but then we know what to do and how to do it. They're going to become that high performing team that this leader is hoping that they will be, but they need that support to do that work. Otherwise, you're going to have to live your life as a leader being Andy and like standing next to your kids and dancing. And I don't want that job. Like, I don't want to have to individually behavior manage. I want to behavior manage one person, not a whole team of people.
Exactly right. And you can't behavior manage the whole team. You just can't. So anyway, that's it. I think it's a good plan. Like I said, it might take a month. This might take a whole month of you asking questions and then trying to watch intently and figure out where the trail is going off the rails and why. And so, but ultimately, you can march your way through this. It's going to be okay. But it like there have 100% been times when I have had to step back and I'll be really frustrated and I will say, Andy, if this takes you 6 weeks to get figured out, in the grand scheme of things, is that acceptable?
That's not the end of the world.
And the answer is yes, honestly. Yeah. Honestly, if I look back and I was like, and you said, what'd you do in the last 6 months, Andy? And I said, we actually got this thing figured out and implemented. I was like, check that, like that's a good 6 months, buddy. But when it happens to me, I want it to take a week and be done. And if it doesn't, I get frustrated. So anyway. Yeah. All right. We're at time. Stephanie, thanks so much for talking through this with me.
This was great. Have a great week, everybody.
See you later, everybody. And that's it, everybody. Thanks for being here, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you have a question for me and Stephanie Goss, send us an email at podcast@unchartedvet.com. That's podcast@unchartedvet.com. Let us know what's going on. Give yourself a pseudonym. We love pseudonyms. They're super fun. Anyway, I will talk to you guys very soon. Take care, everybody.